So hi and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us live or maybe watching the replay. My name is Karina Ladet and I'm an intuitive business mentor for creative and intuitive entrepreneurs all over the world. I'm Swedish, I live in France. I work mainly in English and in French. And one of my favorite things is to really help women in business to connect with who they are, to remember who they are, and why they are here so that they can share their gifts fully with the world, because we're waiting for that. And and so I also wanted to introduce my dear friend, Lara Waldman. Some of you have already seen her before because we've been friends for a long time now. And I would love for you to share a bit about who you are and what you do, Lara.
Well, I'd be delighted to. So I'm Lara Waldman, also known as the Abundance Activator. I'm author of the book Money Manifestation Mastery, and I work with big-hearted, powerful, visionary entrepreneurs and business owners, path makers, way showers of whole new ways of doing things through business and finance. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited for our conversation today.
Yay, me too. And so it's so interesting because as we were hopping on this call, I was going through some stuff because I'm seriously up-leveling in my business right now, as we do, right? It feels like it never really ends. And so it's really funny because Lara was holding space for me and did like an amazing clearing and activation so that I can tap into my next level, which is kind of funny because that's like what we're talking about today. And one of the things that we wanted to chat about is how to create space for your next level vision. Because if you're, a working, pretty busy, probably entrepreneur, busy maybe with your business, busy with your life, and maybe things are going quite well, but then it's so important to also create a space to download that next level, because otherwise we just keep doing the same things we've already done, getting the same results. And so what Lara and I wanted to explore together with you, and you're of course welcome to share any insights, ask questions, and join our conversation, is like, how do you make that happen and where do we start? So do you want to share a bit about like, how do we start with this creating space, Lara?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to talk about is actually why we avoid taking space, why we don't take space. Karina and I are both space holders. That's what we do for transformational work, for healing work, and for next level. It's one of our gifts and superpowers. But what's really interesting to me is, why we don't do that and why we avoid creating space, because it sounds great. Like, why wouldn't I create space for my next level vision and my next level of, my great dream life and consciously creating what I want and desire? And I think one of the symptoms that I see a lot for, particularly for my clients who are business owners and entrepreneurs, is just busyness. I'm just too busy. So for me, that's one of like the really big signs. I'm too busy. There's not enough time running around. I've got too much to do. There's not enough time for space, right? And so that's really hard to argue with, because yeah, you are busy and you are too busy and there isn't time. And so you just keep going. In, like you're saying, probably like a pretty okay life, and so you maybe create some great results, and why upset the apple cart? And we just kind of keep doing what we do and doing what we know. And yet what I'm really always interested in is in the shadow and the unconscious, and what we can't see with that. I'm too busy, right? My question is always like, what are we avoiding? Like, why aren't we creating space for something that's incredibly powerful, incredibly effective, and life-changing in the best ways? So that's what I'd like to touch on first, is kind of like the signs and the symptoms that stop us from creating that space. Because we all crave it, right? We crave space, we crave time, we crave relaxation, we crave just to have some breathing room. And yet it's a bit of a little slippery snake of unconscious avoidance usually. What about you, Karina? What do you notice around some of the reasons why people don't take space?
To me, I feel like there are like two things that I see a lot coming up. One is that when we actually stop is usually when that like big ass vision shows up, and it's really big and it's really powerful, and then we get a bit freaked out because like, who am I to do this, or how I'm going to make this happen? So it's like I guess our own power in a sense, in the form of a vision or the next level in our business. And then I also see when we stop and connect in and there's stillness, we also get to experience all the uncomfortable, painful emotions and things that we either haven't processed yet, or things we've been avoiding, or like another layer of something, which is like, they kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Because when we feel the pain and then we release it, we create space so that we can bring in that new vision. But that's like a whole thing. And I feel like as long as we stay busy and we don't stop, we're not going to notice that much, right?
Definitely, absolutely, and I 100% agree. Except, you know, some of those signs and symptoms of not stopping, right? Staying in the busy. There's a cost, basically, to not taking space. There is a cost, even though, and I find one of them is like getting exhausted, feeling frazzled, like emotional imbalance, irritability, frustration, feeling really stuck, burnt out, maybe kind of health problems, relationship issues, like affects intimacy, it affects connection, it affects like the things that we actually really long for. So it's sort of like this idea that I don't have time, or there's, you know, is also, for me, we need to go a little bit deeper. And this is what the gift of space is and why it's so important, because there's so much running us that we don't realize. And hey, you and I, we live and breathe this work, right? And I totally get resistance and avoidance, because underneath there, yeah, usually feelings we don't want to feel, maybe they're uncomfortable feelings, or there's things we don't want to look at. And it feels too hard and difficult, but actually what's ready and waiting is something so beautiful. Like you're saying, that next level of vision. I think our brain gets really stressed because it's like, when it's like, we don't know what that is. And like I said, it can be overwhelming, but also equally, I think it's what happens through change when there's like the unknown. And it can be deeply stressful, because even though I might say like, oh my God, this vision is what I want. Like it's the next level of my business, or the next level of my finances, or the next level of, you know, lifestyle, health, relationships, whatever. It does mean change, and it means letting go. And it means sort of letting go of things that probably aren't actually working, but they're a comfort zone, aren't they? They're what we know. And that can be deeply stressful. And I find personally that letting go is like a grieving. I have to sometimes go into feeling sadness. And it to me, it feels like a death process of being willing to have the space to let go, right? To allow that next level to come in. So it's totally natural, normal to want to avoid it and busy. But I find that there is like a long-term cost to not taking space. And there's a lot to gain, right, from.
Yes. And I feel like it's unavoidable, because even if we try to push it away, I feel like things, like you said, we start to feel unwell, things aren't working. Usually there's going to be something that's going to make us have to go where we don't want to go, but where the treasure is that we really want. And I feel like you said dying, I feel like it's like a part of me who I have been up until then, she's dying, and everything that's connected to that life is like dying too. And sometimes it's like letting go of friends or people who have supported us, or partners. Like usually there's, I mean, big change coming too, but then what's amazing is that we're also on one level really ready for the next thing, and it's actually what we really desire. And then we also get, like, when we step into that, we also receive all the benefits from that. But it's like letting go before you get to the next step, right? So it's like trusting that if I let go now and I create space, something new and better for me is going to show up. And I feel like no matter how many times we've done this, it's still freaking scary and painful, and like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this again, right?
No, it is really true. Like the only thing I would say now is I've learned to trust that process and not fight it. But it always feels horrendous. Like it just doesn't feel good going through change and going through the unknown. but I've just learned to like know what it is and to lean in, because I know that the cost of not creating space is too high. For me, it's usually burnout and ill health, or like, and things just stop flowing. I stop being in that creative flow. And things just start feeling hard and heavy and like not so enjoyable. I'm like, okay, I'm looking for more fun ways to do things. So so that's it. So that we wanted to talk about kind of why people avoid taking space, because it's a very simple thing. I think, the technical side of it, of, creating that next level vision and creating space for it, is actually a really simple thing conceptually, but we make it really hard in terms of like avoiding it, I think.
Yes. And I feel like also once we do stop, then we get the clarity, right? We see what's coming up, what we need to let go of. We see what's holding us back. And we also see what it is that is like there for us and what the next step is. And so I find that once we get out of that kind of push pull, I don't want to go, but I kind of want to be there anyway. Once we stop and then we get clarity on the situation, it's so much easier to then like move forward. And I guess that's where we want to be, right? Because I feel like the more we resist, the longer that time period is, right? Of the going back and forth and not really being in the flow and maybe not enjoying our lives. But then I feel like when the clarity's there, it usually feels a little bit better, because then usually you know what you have to do, right? And whether you want to or not, it's kind of there, right?
Exactly. It's like the fog lifts, the clouds parts, and suddenly you can see.
Yeah,
absolutely. And what I've found usually is once you get rid of the resistance and you actually just show up the space and you finally surrender and let go, it's like this huge relief as you release. And then this new energy rises, because actually avoiding actually takes a lot of energy. Hiding, and hiding from and running away from actually takes a lot of energy. So when you let go, then there's a surge of clarity. It is a surge of energy. It's like a surge of life force energy that comes that allows that clarity, right? And then we're like, and it's sort of all here. And it's usually, I don't know about you, but I usually find it's more simple, more straightforward, and less dramatic. And like mine, right? It's like, oh, it's just that. Okay, here we go.
All the dramas before. And once you get out of that, you're like, what the heck? And then, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I know. It's always so much simpler. And it's interesting how everything feels so real no matter what phase you're in. Like when it's clear, you're like, I don't know why I got so upset. And this is so simple. But before you were like, on the floor crying. Clarity is the best. And then do you have like, so, because we talk a lot about like creating space, stepping away from our businesses, stepping away from like ordinary life in order to fully receive this vision and like the map forward. Do you have any like favorite ways that you use to create the space? Because we have to like choose it, right? It doesn't just happen when we're done with everything else. I feel like we also need to like plan it and make it happen and create like a safe container to do that.
Yeah, good point. It is actually a discipline and a practice that needs to be carved out. So I call it sacred space and creating conscious space. And so now it's kind of part of my routine, but making sure there's time in my week, time in my day. Ideally, I'm creating little mini short bursts of that every day. I really feel the difference if I don't. So making sure, and I usually just start the day with some kind of space. For not doing, for undoing, and try to do it again, later in the day at some point in terms of rest and restoration, recharging and recalibrating, because there's a lot that happens in the day that we process a lot in that space too, right? Yeah. So that's what I do. I just have to make sure I have like short bursts of like, let's say a daily routine. And then I also make sure that I have spaces for longer stretches where I like block out my diary, block out my calendar. Where I just completely switch off at certain points in the year as well. How about you? What do you do?
I do it like daily or every two or 3 days or so, where I have like some time to like connect in with. I find it actually pretty hard to do that when I'm like at home, because I find like I always find excuses. So for me, I've had like actually plan to like get away. Usually I'll like rent a space up a mountain somewhere where I have not that much connection, like internet connection. And then I take like 2 days, sometimes 3 days off, and I just like connect with nature. And I just usually I don't do the stuff I think I will do when I go. But I feel like it's really just a time for me where I have nothing else to do. And it really helps me not to be home, not to be like in my daily life. And I like going to like an isolated place where nature is really present. That's something, yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah, that is luxurious retreat spaces.
Right.
Amazing, amazing. So we also talked about, because we were talking about the power of space and then the clarity that comes from creating that space. And we also wanted to talk about support. The support that's required. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Karina?
Yeah, I feel like support is super important because I think that we're often super self-reliant. I know that I am, and it's taken me a long time to ask for support. But I feel like we can only do so much for ourselves and see so much for ourselves. So I love calling in support. And I feel like it's such a big part of the next level is maybe new support, more support, support in a different way. Like that is definitely one of the bigger parts of it. And so I love having support, having someone hold space for me, either being in a group or one-on-one with someone. I really like when actually all I have to do is like just drop into a space that is really safe and loving. And all I have to do is like focus on myself and do my thing, because I hold space so much for other people. That I tend to do it just all the time in many different ways. So that's what I like the most, to have someone like hold space for me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar. Like I would say, I used to be a lone wolf and really struggled to trust people, and highly sensitive, and like I like to say highly sensitive, highly traumatized, and learned to really like shut off from people, and became super self-reliant, super independent. I can do it by myself, like, and I've really learned, I say, support is a superpower, and it's a superpower that it was a skill I had to learn to develop to feel safe, to allow myself to be held and supported. And that also came through for me through clarity of vision. Like my inner guidance told me, like, you need to be held and supported. You cannot do this by yourself. And I was like, what? I can't do it by myself. And I used to think it was a weakness. I used to think that it was weak if I needed support. And so I had a lot of crisscross wires around that. So again, high level, high achieving, powerful, successful, business owners and entrepreneurs or people in the world, like, we all need support, right? We all have these parts that it's really important to be held, to be looked after, so that you can relax, release, and drop in and allow that clarity of vision. If you're holding everything up all the time, right? Actually, you're in survival mode. You're in just kind of like holding it all together. So you actually have to be held and supported to be able to let go. And that can look in lots of different ways. So for me, it's about making sure I have like regular sort of that one-to-one holding, like body work or energy work. And then also making sure I have, this level of connection, like, so Karina is my friend, and also going into like retreat spaces and places with networks of people who are doing this work, for me is like golden, where you have that sense of support through connection and network and community, as well as being facilitated and held professionally. And then it's like, wow, then really powerful things can happen.
Yeah, and I was so interesting because I was actually thinking of when I went to your retreat and your event in London in January. And I mean, the moment I stepped on the train, so I live in the south of France, I took the train to London, spent a few days there, and went to your 2-day event. And like the whole journey was like sacred time for me. Like it was just amazing, just from being in movement. I love taking the train. I love daydreaming. I love, the ideas you get when you're like in a new environment, you're moving, you're discovering, you're kind of super curious and open in a way that it's not always easy to do that in everyday life, when we're in a surrounding that we already know. And the whole thing was just like inspiration, support, new ideas. I felt so energized. And then of course the event was awesome, and meeting great people, and just all the conversations and the things that kind of simmer you know, like when I got home, I had so many ideas for what I wanted to do in my business. I had like so much clarity, and I think it's so important. And I don't feel like I can get that in any other way than to like step away from my life and be somewhere else. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also very awesome that you're going to be hosting a very special event in a very beautiful part of the world. Would you like to tell us about the gorgeous retreat that you're hosting? Because obviously, you know, we also create what we need and want too, right? We like to hold space for our dream worlds. So what have you been cooking up, Karina? Because it looks pretty beautiful what you've got on offer.
Thank you. Yes, totally. I mean, basically, I created my dream retreat. Like, I was like, what would I love to experience? And that's what I created. So, September 16 to 23rd, I've found a beautiful stone house in Provence, like beautifully renovated. It's so pretty. So many like attentions to details, a beautiful garden. There's like a pool. And we're right in the middle of Provence areas that I would love to explore with the women who are joining me. And so it's a mix of, so basically it's like a week of slowing down, tuning in, plenty of time to like be, to journal, to write, to like daydream, to meditate. We're going to get massages. I'll be holding space and doing like meditations and clearings and activations. A lot of connections with the land as well, because it's very, very magical area. And I've been there a few times now, like connecting with different places and letting my guidance like guide me to where I need to go. And so I found some really beautiful spaces that I can't wait to share with the women who are joining us. And the women who've signed up so far are amazing. And so it's like an application process. So we have a conversation, I check in, and we both check in if it's right fit. So like they are super dreamy. And it's going to be like a lot of like nurturing as well. So my husband's going to cook amazing French food. We're going to go out, eat a couple of times. There's going to be plenty of space to also like be inspired, whether it's inspired by nature, inspired by the, you know, when you have time, either alone or with others, you also receive inspiration. We're going to see an amazing art exhibition as well in a really magical place. There's going to be some connections as well around Mary Magdalene, because she also spent apparently the rest of her life in this cave up in the mountains in Provence. And I've been there a few times too. And I really wanted to bring these women to this place because it's very, yeah, it's just really powerful and magical and beautiful space. And so really connecting in with that sacred feminine wisdom, because I feel like we so easily get busy caring for others, you know, whether it's in our business or our lives. Like we have so much that we're invested in and so many other people we care about. And this is really going to be a week like for you, slowing down, enjoying life, and really receiving inspiration and pleasure and like just time and space to be. And I feel like the French are really, really good at that, especially in the south of France, where like they really take the time to like eat for a long time, to just really enjoy life. And I mean, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs the last few years in my business. And I feel like we're often so driven, right? We have so much going on and we're so self-reliant and we're like on. And so this is really an invitation to step into another rhythm and another way of life, really. So I'm super excited to share also the part of France that I love the most and the part of the French lifestyle that I really love. And then of course they're going to get like, it's different when you travel with someone who lives in the country, who speaks the language, because I feel like, I don't know if it's particular for France, but anyway, you always get like better treatment. You find like the really, really cool spots and the magical places. And that's something I really love when I travel to another country, is to be shown like all the secret magical spots as well. So yeah, so there is still spaces left if anyone wants to join us. It starts on September 16th. And yeah, it's just going to be so freaking magical.
Beautiful. And so what they, if anyone's interested, they click on the link below this video and then get on a call with you. You can find out the details, get on a call with you, and then if it's the right fit, oui, madame.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you can book a 20-minute call with me and we talk about the details. You can ask me questions, like no strings attached at all, and just explore if it's a good fit. So there's like plenty of information, lots of beautiful photos on my website. So definitely check that out. And if you want to come, I would love to have you. I feel like it's so important for us to give ourselves that, I feel, because this isn't like, it's not really like a business retreat, but when you have like that much time to yourself to connect in with who you are and your purpose, I feel like what we received in those spaces, that always like radiates out into my business because it's like part of my purpose. So I think it's so important to start with us.
100%. And you're recharged, refueled, reignited, re-inspired, and that feeds all areas of life, doesn't it? It's business, finance, but all areas, health, relationships, invaluable. And how beautiful and luxurious. And so I highly recommend. Karina holds beautiful space and in a beautiful place. I wish I could be there too.
Yeah.
We'll do it next time. We'll do it next year. Yes, beautiful. So yeah, don't wait. Book a call with Karina and very special space.
Oh, thank you so much, Lara. And thank you so much to everyone listening. If you're watching the replay, please leave comments, ask questions, share your insights. And thank you so much, Lara, for taking time out in your day to chat with me and to share all the wonderful wisdom that you have as well over the years as a soulful entrepreneur. Thank you so much to everyone, and have a beautiful rest of your day.